Hello all, a warm welcome to everyone tuning in to Oracle IAM Insight session today. Today's session is about Oracle Access Manager 12c upgrade, especially the upgrade readiness check feature. My name is Chitra Sabapathy, and I'm from Identity Management Support Team. The agenda, we will be going over the feature and what are the checks and validation that are done as part of this feature, how to install this in sample output, and we'll walk over some of the issues, some of the common issues and the solutions. Feature overview. The upgrade readiness check is typically performed on OAM 11.1.2.3 domain. As we know, the starting point for upgrade is OAM has to be in 11.1.2.3 version. So we run the upgrade readiness check to see whether this 11G domain is ready to be upgraded to 12C. But part of these checks, 4 checks are done to detect the known problem areas during upgrade. It also verifies the prerequisites before we actually perform the schema and the config upgrade. That helps with a lot of issues later on, which we can fix it before the upgrade time is reduced and the upgrade goes smoothly. So this is a very important feature. What are the 4 checks and validation that were done? The OPSS and the OAM key stores were validated, and the validation of the OAM config version to make sure the config data is up to date. And it's the same between the clustered environments and between DB and the flat file in the OAM domain. And also checks for the obsolete agents. In 12C, we no longer support 10G and OSSO agents. So we have to check for the presence of this before we begin the update. And also we check for Coherence Keystore validation. OPSS and OAM Keystore validation. The OPSS and OAM keystores need to be valid and not corrupt. So these are the keystores, the default keystore.jks and OAM keystore. It also validates, the key in the OPSS and the OAM credential store. They have to be identical. The OPSS and the OAM keystore keys has to be identical. We also decrypt the SSL global passphrase in the OAM config.xml using the OAM key to make sure it's valid and correct. That's the first check. Then we, again, as I mentioned earlier, we also validate the OAM config version. We compare the config version from the OAM config.xml in the flat file against the DB version stored to make sure they have the same config data. Third check is check for obsolete agents. The obsolete agents are 10G agent, 10G OSSO agent, OpenSSO agent, and also the coexistence mode is also considered as an obsolete agent. In 12C, coexistence mode is no longer supported. So if you have it enabled, the readiness check will fail. What are these suggested actions when it finds the obsolete agents? If you have a 10G agent, OpenSSO, or a 10G SSO agent, you would have to delete these agents before you begin the upgrade. And if you have coexistence enabled, you have to disable them. The parameter is in the OAM config file, and the setting name is coexist mode. If you have set it to true, you have to set it to false. We also check for the coherence keystore validation. We check the key alias and the search alias in the coherence keystore. Both the values must be present in the keystore. Installation is running the UA with dash readiness parameter. It'll launch the readiness check in a UI mode. If you want to run it in a silent mode, then you pass another file, the response file that is generated the first time when you ran the upgrade assistant in UI mode. The response parameter runs the upgrade assistant in the silent mode. So this is a sample response file where you can see you provide the domain name, etc., some environment specific information that you provide to run the UA in the silent mode. This is a sample output. In this output, as we saw before, the various checks are done, and also checks for the prerequisites. So it checks the schema and the database version, and also checks the OEM config version. In the database, everything is a success. And here it checks as you see, it starts to check the keys, OPSS and OEM keys. Those checks are valid, and it's a pass. And then the obsolete agent check fails. So what is the agent it finds? It finds the IAM suite agent, which is the default agent that is bootstrapped to protect the admin console. In 11G, that is 10G WebGate. So it finds that and it fails. So as we saw, the solution is to remove the 10G agent. There's the KB article how you can remove the IAM suite agent from the console and then use a OHS WebGate or any 12C or 11G WebGate to protect the admin console. Now let's go through some of the common issues that you might encounter when you run that you would see when you run the upgrade readiness check. The first one is when the key is not present in the CSF. The typical error you get is fail to retrieve JKS key from CSF. What do you do in that situation? You open this GPS config JSE.xml file and go to the service instance name and add that property, service type, DB Oracle. If that doesn't fix the issue, maybe the Keystore itself is corrupted, so you might want to restore the files from the backup or create a new Keystore. If the CSF key values are not equal, then you get the error that test that OEM OPSS keys are valid failed error. In that case, you have to make sure the keys, the password for the OEM Keystore and the default Keystore.jks, the OEM and the OPSS keystores are identical. You can see what the passwords currently are by using the Keystore to list the Keystore. And then if there is a mismatch, you correct it before the upgrade. The other issue you would see is when it fails to decrypt the SSL global passphrase. In that case, you first make sure that you have a passphrase by looking at the SSL simple mode config setting name in the OEM config.xml. If it has the value and still fails to decrypt, you might want to regenerate a new one using the WLSD command, generate simple mode keystore command. It takes in the SSL global passphrase. If you don't know the passphrase, then you can use the display simple mode global passphrase command to get that passphrase to regenerate the SSL global passphrase. In summary, the upgrade readiness check feature essentially improves the upgrade experience because we run the prerequisites, we make sure the prerequisites are met, and some of the common problem areas, the checks are done to make sure they're configured correctly. So that makes the upgrade smoother, and it gives you the ability to correct the issues before we actually perform the upgrade. These are some of very useful KBAs for the common issues that we discussed earlier. Some of the solutions involve regenerating keys, etc. These KBAs have much more detailed steps. I highly recommend going through them. Thank you again for tuning in today's Oracle OEM Insight session. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks.